as I come through this corner. A little too hot. I lose it. Boom. And, hey, I'm kind of happy that I crashed, Jonathan. I knew that I was pushing myself hard enough. And I didn't hurt myself either. All right, hey, guys. Welcome back. This is a cyclocross race. I was talked into a cyclocross race. I have the winner of this race with me. This is Jonathan Baker. Thanks for joining, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Touchstone Racing. You are so good at cross racing. You're good at road racing. You've mainly focused on Masters races, but you jump into P1-2 races and still podium. Like he was in the Roadie crit video that I covered earlier this year. Guys, check that out.
7 and 8. John goes ahead and does it for me. Takes a totally mean line. I take a couple of hard pedal strokes and try to come back to his wheel.
He's the current national champion Masters road race and former cyclocross Masters national champion, potentially this year's national champion in the Masters. You're going for that in a couple of months, right?
Yeah, knock on wood, but there's going to be some fast guys there. I don't want to jinx it.
That's what they're saying about you too, though. So anyway, we're here to talk about cross racing. This is my first cross race. Borrowed the bike, rode it around the parking lot for a bit. Let's get the excuses out of the way. Fitness is bad, but good thing I have Jonathan here to talk me through it and try to give you guys some tips too on how to probably cross over some of your road racing skills into cyclocross and just to give you some pro tips on cyclocross racing. So let's get into it. All right, so before we get started, Jonathan, tell me about how important the start is to a cyclocross race because I didn't really understand this coming into it.
It's about as important as the finish in a criterium. But I know you're a sprinter, Jeff, and honestly, I expected a little bit more from you out of the start.
I expected more from me too.
So really, you have to go as hard as you possibly can because things funnel down, and if you've missed like the first 5 or 10 guys, you're gonna have a hard time ever seeing the front of the race again. So people are going all out. 100% effort once they hear that whistle.
Yeah, so this is I think we forgot to mention, this is the Coyote Point cyclocross race. It's pretty technical. We'll talk about the course as we go through it, but the start is up 1 kilometer at 8%, 10% hill, something like that. Does that sound about right?
Maybe a touch shorter than that, but yeah, it started out hard. This is a little unusual. Usually you have a little bit more of a flat start, but here we were looking at this hill and we had to pop it down and start sprinting up this hill, like kind of a dead start hill climb.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna get it started here. Let's check it out. So I'm looking at my camera here, and boom, whistle. And I was not really prepared for that. What was your pro tip? You just told me, Jonathan. You said look at the official, right?
Yeah. Once he gets that whistle anywhere near his mouth, you know he's about to blow it, and you have to be, all nerves ready, and just thinking about that whistle like a sprinter at the start of a 100-meter dash. So
yeah, I had to get off the power there for a second, and I've already been passed by a bunch of guys. Never good when you're off the power going up a hill, and then right here, I get chopped so hard and I have to unclip, so I'm already at a stop on the hill.
Yeah, and you can see some guys are just riding away, especially we'll get up to a kind of a technical corner here, and you get that kind of accordion effect where it takes everybody a little bit of time to accelerate out of it. So you'll see the gap start to open.
Yeah, like this was a moment right here where it all gets squished into single file, obviously, and I felt like, obviously right here I'm like not putting any power in. I'm just kind of coasting almost at a standstill, and I feel like the front guys were probably just blasting through that corner.
Yeah, it's almost like the more technical criteriums, everybody really races to those harder pinch points because they know that they're going to have to make a big effort out of the corner to try to catch back up and multiply that times 100 in a cyclocross race.
Another moment right here where, look, I am just like the front guys are flying through and I am just kind of rolling through. And this is the moment I'm dreading, so over these barriers. Oh, I've never done this before.
You didn't crash. It didn't look too bad.
I did get passed by one guy.
How'd it feel when you jumped on? I couldn't really see you jumping on, but...
I got those first couple times through were just like I was just learning how to do it, and I didn't want to crash. The finish was right there, and there's all the fans right there watching. I just didn't want to eat it like on the first lap, so I did take it pretty gingerly, and I was very cautious. But my clipping was pretty good actually. Like I just stomp on the pedal, right? Like I'm used to road pedals where it's one-sided, but I just stomped on the pedal and I got the clip in pretty good. The problem is I'm not carrying a lot of my speed. Can you talk to that point a little bit, Jonathan? Like I felt like my fitness isn't great this time of year, but I felt like I was going to carry me a little bit better. But I was coming through these corners and I was like losing all of my speed. Do you have a tip on like how to carry your speed better through these sections?
I was thinking about this as I knew we were coming up here. It's a really different cornering technique than on the road. On the road, you lean the bike over fully, and your body relative to the bike stays pretty constant. You stay centered on the bike, you lean over, and you turn. In cyclocross and maybe a little bit of mountain, a lot of times your body and the bike are moving separately. Like you keep the bike straight up and down while you're leaning your body over to kind of keep that traction. So it's kind of hard to describe without looking at it, but it's a lot of counter steer a lot of times and a lot of like kind of pushing the bike one way while your body is moving the other, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Like as if you're riding in wet conditions, I feel like I do that a little bit more. I lean my body more, the bike less.
Yeah, like here you're going through some really dusty corners, and it doesn't look like you're doing too bad. If you're not slipping out, if you're not spinning with the rear wheel, then you've probably done a pretty good corner. And some of those are pretty slow, so you're not losing a lot of time to the other people through that, from what I can tell.
Yeah, but I do feel like I wasn't pushing myself hard enough through those corners. Like obviously it's my first time doing it. I don't really have the confidence in my technique, and also the equipment. Like I wasn't kidding when I said I rolled around in the parking lot a little bit on this bike. I definitely could have been pushing it a little bit harder. I really struggled through these corners. These are like deep grooved, really soft, and I'm right up against the barrier right there, or the fence right there, and I just, like you can see, I'm losing ground right here, and I really am like pushing myself right up to the end of my comfort level.
Every race is a puzzle, and every corner is a puzzle, and each time you do a corner, you're kind of trying to solve that puzzle a little bit better. You're like, how can I take this slightly better, slightly faster? And honestly, you look at like lap times, you'll get faster as the race, at least I do. I get faster as the race goes on because I get slightly better in a lot of different sections. It's really a mental test to try to kind of solve all these little puzzles out on the course to be as efficient and fast as possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we'll get to that a little bit more. But I want to talk about this downhill. And like, can you talk about shifting your weight? Because I was so loaded on the front bars because I'm a crit racer, and like I feel like the weight is different shifted. Can you talk about that difference? I would even
consider getting into the drops here for more technical descents. You just have a little more power on the braking, a little bit more stable position. I don't really shift my weight back off the back of the saddle. Maybe I kind of move it back in the saddle a little bit. What you really want to try to do is keep your weight balance between the two wheels. So obviously when you're going downhill, it's naturally going to force more weight forward, so you need to compensate a little bit by moving backwards. But if you have your weight evenly distributed between the front and back wheel, that's going to give you the best traction. That's going to give you the best chance of not sliding out of that corner.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we're in the sand now. It's more like gravel, but you can see the ocean's right there. This isn't San Mateo, and it took me a couple of laps. To your point earlier, I found a good line on the left, like all the way up against the left there, and it may have been just because more people had been riding across it, but I found a really good line on the far left through there where it wasn't so like deep and channeled.
Yeah, that was a really fun section. Sand is always a challenge. You make these ruts happen in the sand, and your bike just kind of wants to follow the rut. You can't force it, because if you plow through a fresh place where there's no rut, you have to put out kind of twice as much power. I discovered this. I had to pass somebody in that section. I got out there in this deep sand, and I almost came to a dead stop, honestly.
Oh, you passed somebody through that section? Because wasn't passing anybody. I just took a bad line through that section, and I felt like, it felt like my wheels were glued to the ground. Like I just came to a stop. Like it was bad. I almost had to unclip through there.
Yeah, eventually some of the back markers I started lapping, and unfortunately I caught one right there where there's really only one good line.
Yeah, so I did borrow this bike from somebody who's a little bit taller than me, and he did give me, there's a guy, mechanical, I forgot about that. I did feel like he gave me a shorter stem too, and he said, you might want to use this shorter stem. And I was like, oh, it feels like my road bike. So I just kind of rolled with it. But I did feel like I was just too weighted on the front bars, and I was like really sinking in the softer, dusty spots, and also in the sand. Oh, I'm making a pass. Look at me.
Nice.
I'm gonna get passed by those same guys in the technical section. That's how my race went.
Yeah, my recommendation is to go a little bit shorter in the front, but keep the rest of your position the same as far as your road position. If you're a roadie coming into cross, that shorter stem is going to give you a little more leverage on the bars, and it's going to keep your weight a little bit more off the front, like you mentioned.
So here, this is where we started. By the way, you guys, we're coming up this hill again, and this is where I made up a lot of my time because, eliminate the technical stuff, and I can kind of carry some of my fitness through here, and I was doing well on this climb, but I was just losing all this ground on the rest of the course. How would you rate this course in terms of like how technical it is with the other stuff on the calendar?
For NorCal, it's a little more technical. Globally, it's probably somewhere in the middle. I had the privilege of racing in Belgium for a couple seasons, and there's one word I would use to describe the courses over there, and it's dangerous. If you put guys from America, like masters races, they would just get hurt. They wouldn't be able to complete a lap. Like, there's some truly sketchy stuff. This course doesn't quite approach that, but it has some fun technical stuff, and it definitely requires some good technique to get around this course quickly. So, not a bad choice for your first cross race.
All right, let's fast forward a bit and take a look at some action that happens a couple laps later. All right, we are a lap later, and I turned my Garmin on this time, so now we actually have some data. No power, but there's a map. We're coming back into that grass section, and keep your eyes peeled because as I come through this corner a little too hot, I lose it. Boom. And hey, I'm kind of happy that I crashed, Jonathan. I knew that I was pushing myself hard enough. And I didn't hurt myself either.
It looked like, it's kind of hard to tell. It looked like you might have slid your back tire out.
I did.
Yeah, just a little bit too far back. And again, that's maybe you hit a root or something, but I just noticed you were leaned over. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but again, keeping the weight between the two wheels and trying to keep the bike a little stood up more as opposed to leaned over might have helped there.
Got it. Like you were talking about earlier. Yeah.
If you don't crash, you don't know what your limit is, though. That's a great point.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to take it to the edge.
Yep. And the back tire kind of washed out a bit. I unclipped my inside pedal, and I kind of I finally crashed. Stomped a little bit and slowed down the crash. So I didn't hurt myself or anything, but I did, as you saw, kind of lose my handlebars a bit, and I had to stop there for a long time and get my alignment back in order, and lost a lot of position. But you know what? Jonathan at this point is already about a half a lap ahead of me. So at this point, I'm thinking I'm just going to race my race and enjoy the hell out of this, my first cross race, and see if I can catch those guys who passed me.
Cross is, we've got guys like Mathieu van der Poel bringing cyclocross to the road, and we see how talented he is. So I think it's a good sport for people to get into. You can see it brings some wintertime fitness around and keeps things exciting. So I'm glad to see more people getting into it here.
Yeah, I would love to do another one. I had a blast, and I think it's like one of those things where you do it once and then you're like twice as good as you were before. Not saying I'm going to have any results or anything, but at least I'll kind of know what to expect the second time around.
Yeah, experience pays. Fitness is only about half of the equation. The rest is just all those little technique points about going fast around corners. If you think about a cyclocross lap, maybe it's 5 or 6 minutes, but it probably has about 100 corners in it. And if you're losing a half second around each corner, you're do your math out there, and you're losing about a minute a lap just on technique alone. So.
In my case, 2 or 3 seconds a corner. I had so much fun though, and so tell me about you. So I already spoiled it earlier on at the top of this. You won this race, and you are up in a group of like 3 or 4, right?
I think I was about 4th off the line, and there was I wish I knew his name, but he wound up 5th. But there was a junior racer who got a great start. I had to chase him down over the course of the first lap. There was a couple guys who were pretty close to me, maybe 10 or 15 seconds. I managed to hold that gap and extend it slowly over the course of the race. But it was one of those things where, you figure out where you're fast and you go as hard as you can in those sections, and the rest of the time you just hold on and try to keep mentally strong, because you see the laps going down and you can use that as a metric to two more times up the hill, 2 more times through the deep sand, and just kind of keep pushing yourself. And
do you feel like there's a spot where you were making up ground? Like, is there a spot that you're good at, that you prefer?
I'm a decent climber. I think I was pretty good on the climb. That's actually where I got my gap on the first lap. I caught the guy who was off the front, and that's where I gapped second place. Ryan Wren wound up coming in second.
That was the junior, the Swift.
He wound up 5th. He faded a bit. Yeah,
those kids
Ryan
are so fast.
Wren wound up second. And then some of the running sections. I've been doing a lot of run training this year. I know our nationals course has 2 really big run-ups, so I felt really fast up this run.
I felt really slow. Tell me what I'm doing wrong here, because I came into the bottom and I wasn't carrying speed, and then I just ran my bike up like that. Tell me why. Tell me, like, when should you pick up your bike?
You should pick up your bike well before you come to a stop. The mistake I see a lot of guys make is they keep pedaling until they can't pedal anymore, and then they're dead stopped. When you're stopped, obviously you're not going anywhere, and then they put their bike on the shoulder and then they start running. So you have to kind of anticipate and maybe get off a couple seconds before then, while you still have this forward momentum. You're gonna have to learn some sort of shouldering technique. There's 2 pretty popular styles. Just spend some time throwing the bike on the shoulder, taking it on, taking it off. It's not that hard to learn. And then once you have it on the shoulder, you feel more like a runner. You can swing your arms, you can get that arm pump going, and that helps you get up that hill a little faster.
Yeah, so it sounds like the actual technique of getting the bike on your shoulder isn't the big deal. It's the timing of it, huh? And like carrying your speed and like knowing when to pick up your bike, when to put it back down.
Yeah, just all those little things. And then you want to be in the right gear for when you get back on your bike too. That's another mistake people make, is they don't anticipate the next section after they get off for a run, and then maybe they're over geared or something like that. So a lot of times I'll shift down to the easy gear that I know I'll need when I jump back on the bike before I even throw it on my shoulder.
Yeah. I see people do that in crits too. It's funny. Like, they'll come through a technical section on a crit, and then they'll be like massively over geared because they didn't really anticipate what's coming up next. So I understand that. So I think I had that dialed, but I was running my bike up like just with my hands on the bars, not even picking it up, and I know it was costing me time, but I didn't even know how to pick up my bike. Like, I'm surprised I didn't eat it over those barriers right there.
It happens all the time. I am not ashamed to say I've crashed on barriers already this year. Full head over shoulders, yeah.
But it's for a different reason, because you're coming in hot and you're coming in just at that, like, with as much speed as possible. I didn't crash over the barriers, but it would have been for a completely different reason. It would have been because I just don't have the technique.
I noticed here, like, I was sprinting as hard as I could on this section. Here, looks like you're putting down some watts, but another thing is, when you do have the opportunity to pedal hard, you have to take full advantage of that, even if you're going way over threshold. So, you look at, I know you don't have power on this bike, but if you were to analyze the power curve of this compared to even the crit, you're going to see it way more spiky. And sometimes I double up and I do 2 crits in a day, just because the effort isn't quite as hard. I never can do 2 cross races in a day. It's like I'm taxed after one. You're doing full-on sprint efforts out of a lot of these corners, and it's just a lot more stressing to the muscles.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Back there, I was not going hard on that on that little paved section before the downhill, and I probably should have been, because I have this whole downhill to recover, first of all, and you're right. I mean, it's a good point. Like, you have limited areas on the course where you can put down watts, so you have to take full advantage.
That sucked for you as much as it did for me.
Cross is hard.